Imagine stepping out to buy potatoes and vanishing without a trace. 5 days later, your body is found 25 miles away, dressed in a stranger's suit, with a mysterious green gel smeared on your neck and a face frozen in terror. This is the chilling true story of Ziggy Adamski, a man whose bizarre death has baffled investigators for decades. Was it aliens, a secret experiment, or something even more sinister? The truth will leave you questioning everything you know about reality. On the afternoon of June 6, 1980, a 56-year-old man named Zigmund Adamski, affectionately known as Ziggy, was enjoying a late lunch with his wife and cousin in their cozy brick house in the English village of Tingley. That day carried a heavy weight of anticipation for Ziggy because his goddaughter's wedding was the next day. Ziggy shared a special bond with her, as he and his wife, Laudai, couldn't have children due to medical reasons. To Ziggy, his goddaughter felt like the daughter he never had. He was honored to walk her down the aisle, but the pressure to fulfill his role perfectly consumed his thoughts. Adding to the tension, Ziggy had clashed with his cousin earlier in the day over a perceived slight towards his goddaughter. Despite these emotions lingering during their meal, Ziggy suddenly remembered he'd forgotten to buy potatoes earlier while shopping for the meal's ingredients. Seemingly wanting a break from the stressful atmosphere, he decided to run to the store to grab them, even though it was too late for the potatoes to be part of the lunch. Ignoring his cousin's offer to accompany him, Ziggy reassured everyone he'd be back shortly, took some cash, and left. Tingley, the village Ziggy called home, was a peaceful place. He and Laudai had moved there after fleeing Poland during World War II, a time when both had been prisoners. After enduring such hardships, they sought a safe haven to rebuild their lives, and Tingley became their sanctuary. Ziggy worked as a coal miner for 27 years, while Laudai, battling multiple sclerosis, managed life from a wheelchair. The couple's circle of supportive friends made their lives in Tingley fulfilling and stable. The shop Ziggy intended to visit was just a short 3-block walk. Given the distance, his wife and cousin expected him back within 10 to 15 minutes. However, as time passed and Ziggy didn't return, Laudai's concern grew. Ziggy was known for his punctuality and reliability, making his delay deeply uncharacteristic. Fearing the worst, she sent the cousin to check the shop. At the store, the shopkeeper confirmed Ziggy had been there about 25 minutes earlier, purchased a bag of potatoes, and left walking in the direction of his house. The cousin, now worried, retraced the path back home, scanning for any sign of Ziggy but found none. Returning to the house, they decided to canvass the neighborhood, asking anyone they could find if they'd seen Ziggy. Hours passed with no success, prompting Laudai to contact the police. Initially, the authorities hesitated to launch a major search. Ziggy was an adult who had only been missing for a short time with no indication of foul play. As they investigated further, they learned Ziggy had recently been denied early retirement from the coal mine despite his worsening lung condition caused by years of exposure to coal dust. Coupled with the wedding stress, his recent argument with his cousin, and the constant care of his ailing wife, the police began speculating that Ziggy might have left intentionally to escape his burdens. They advised Laudai and the cousin to wait and see if Ziggy would return that night or attend the wedding the next day, given his deep attachment to his goddaughter. But Ziggy never came home, nor did he show up for the wedding, a moment he had been so eagerly anticipating. After the wedding, Laudai doubled down on efforts to locate her husband. She alerted local hospitals, spoke to neighbors, and pleaded with the police to intensify their search. Despite the community's collective effort, no trace of Ziggy could be found. It was as though he had simply disappeared into thin air. On the morning of June 11th, 5 days after Ziggy Adamski left home to buy potatoes and mysteriously disappeared, Trevor Parker arrived at his father's coal yard in Todmorden, a small town in England. The coal yard was a large, open area surrounded by a chain-link fence, bordered by railway tracks. The yard contained towering mounds of coal near its edges, and a modest office building stood within its perimeter. When Trevor drove through the gates that day, his first observation was the damp ground glistening from an early morning rainstorm. As he scanned the yard, everything appeared in order, no sign of coal displacement from the storm. Satisfied, He made his way to the office to begin his paperwork. Hours passed uneventfully until lunchtime, when Trevor decided to take an extended break at a nearby pub. After spending a couple of hours there, he returned to the coal yard at around 3:45 p.m. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, except for a peculiar dark object resting atop one of the coal piles at the back of the yard. It wasn't clear to Trevor whether the object had been there earlier or if it was new, but it immediately drew his attention. Curious, Trevor parked his vehicle and began walking toward the coal pile, which stood approximately 12 feet tall. As he approached within 30 feet, he recognized the shape as a person's shoe, and his initial assumption was that it was one of the homeless individuals who occasionally wandered into the yard from the nearby railway tracks. These individuals were known to get drunk and sometimes fall asleep in the yard. Assuming this was another such instance, Trevor chose not to interact directly. Instead, he returned to the office and called for an ambulance, expecting the paramedics to handle the situation. When the medics arrived shortly after, they treated the call as routine, sharing lighthearted banter as they approached the coal pile. One medic climbed the mound to check on the figure while the other waited below. Trevor noticed something unusual as he observed the medic's climb. This person was wearing a tailored brown suit, an attire far removed from what he expected. Before he could process this oddity, the medic on the mound froze. Moments later, they hurriedly descended the coal pile, visibly shaken, and instructed their partner to call the police immediately. Trevor, now unsettled, pressed the medic for an explanation, but the visibly pale responder only muttered something about something being very wrong before walking off to compose themselves. Within minutes, a police vehicle arrived, and Officer Alan Godfrey, along with his partner, took over the investigation. Guided by the medic, Alan climbed the coal pile and found the figure lying face down. As he examined the scene, several unsettling details caught his attention. Despite lying on coal, the man's suit was pristine, completely devoid of coal dust. This was baffling, as Alan himself was already coated in soot from the climb. The man's hair was another oddity. It appeared haphazardly chopped, with uneven bald patches, as though cut carelessly with blunt scissors. The most chilling discovery, however, was a deep wound at the back of the man's neck. It was partially concealed under a strange green, jelly-like substance that Alan couldn't identify. Despite these eerie details, none of it explained the medic's earlier reaction, until Alan rolled the body over. The man's face was locked in an expression of sheer terror. His jaw was unnaturally wide open, his teeth bared, and his eyes bulging, frozen in a look of absolute horror. This wasn't the face of someone who had peacefully passed away. It was clear this individual had experienced something profoundly traumatic in their final moments. The discovery of Ziggy Adamski only deepened the mystery surrounding his fate. The small town of Todmorden, where his body was found, lay about 25 miles from his home. It was a place where, as far as anyone could tell, Ziggy had no known connections. Why he would have traveled there remained unexplained. Moreover, he had reportedly left home on foot to buy groceries. Could he really have walked such a long distance to this unfamiliar location? Even assuming Ziggy somehow made it to this coal yard, the area was far from secluded. The yard was an open space, clearly visible from its surroundings. Anyone near the site, whether employees, truck drivers making deliveries, people by the railroad tracks, or even passengers on passing trains, would likely have noticed a man climbing to the top of a coal pile. Yet nobody reported seeing him. It was as if he had simply materialized on the coal heap. Adding to the strangeness, Ziggy's clothing provided another puzzle. He was dressed in a brown three-piece suit, but it wasn't his. The outfit was improperly fastened with misaligned buttons, and he wore no undershirt, only the jacket against his bare skin. His hair had been crudely cut, as if by someone unfamiliar with hairstyling. And while he had no coal dust on his clothing, which might be expected if he had climbed the pile, there was also no evidence that his body had been dragged there. Then there was the wound on the back of his neck, a deep cut, but not one severe enough to cause death. What made it even more baffling was the green gel-like substance smeared over the injury. Forensic testing during the autopsy failed to identify this strange jelly, despite numerous analyses. Additionally, the medical examiner determined that Ziggy had died on the same day he was discovered. This left an unexplained gap of 5 days from the time he disappeared to his death. The autopsy revealed no signs of malnutrition, dehydration, or any physical altercation. However, small burns caused by acid were found near the wound on his neck. The apparent cause of death was a heart harm, though the circumstances surrounding it remained unclear. Ziggy's facial expression, frozen in terror, suggested he had experienced something profoundly frightening in his final moments. Despite extensive investigation, authorities ultimately ruled his death as natural causes, and the case was closed. Yet, the unresolved details, his disheveled appearance, the unidentified green substance, and the peculiar circumstances have fueled speculation for decades. One of the most prominent theories is that Ziggy was abducted by extraterrestrials. Proponents suggest that aliens may have subjected him to experiments, dressed him in the ill-fitting suit, and returned him to Earth by placing his body atop the coal pile. This would explain the absence of coal dust on his clothing and the presence of the mysterious green gel. Even skeptics find it difficult to dismiss some aspects of the case. To this day, the green substance remains unidentified, despite more than 40 years of scientific inquiry. Additionally, police officer Alan Godfrey, who responded to the scene, later reported witnessing a UFO in the area within weeks of Ziggy's death. The enigma of Ziggy Adamski continues to baffle investigators and intrigue conspiracy theorists, standing as one of the strangest unexplained cases in modern history. Did you see that twist coming? From mysterious disappearances to unexplained green goo, this story has it all. What do you think happened to Ziggy Adamski? Was it aliens, a secret experiment, or something even stranger? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more mind-blowing mysteries. Until next time, keep your eyes on the skies. You never know what's out there.